Oh hell internet, I'm back again for another chapter of the Book of Master Mo. I've moved my microphone a little closer to my mouth. It is supposed to be there, it's a lav mic, but it means I'm a little bit restricted in movement, but I hope the sound quality is better. However, if there are more jump cuts in this video, it's because I have a cold recording right now, so I'll have to remove all the coughing. Please bear with me. But the next chapter here is chapter 31, Percipient Ghosts. And this is Percipient Ghost 3, the other two versions having been lost over history or perhaps never having existed in the first place. And in this, Mo is trying to lay out why he thinks that ghosts and spirits of the middle realm genuinely exist, or at least why people should behave as if they do. For him, ghosts and spirits are the mechanism by which heaven meets out its rewards and punishments, and so they're a very important part of maintaining the order of the world and establishing this correct procession of trickle-down virtue. However, I think you can probably gather how I'm going to fall on this, especially if you watched the previous video on Heaven's Intention. I'm not going to read the whole chapter, it's rather long. I'm going to read selected passages, and then at a certain point I'll stop and give my clear sort of perspective on what I think this chapter is actually trying to do, trying to achieve. So, 31.1. Master Mo spoke, saying, "Since the passing of the sage kings of the three dynasties of former times, the world has lost Yi, and the feudal lords use force in governing, so that those living now who are rulers and ministers and superiors and inferiors are without kindness or loyalty, while fathers and sons and younger and older brothers are without compassion, filial conduct, respect, upright behavior, and goodness. Those who are leaders are not diligent in the conduct of government, while those who are lowly are not diligent in the conduct of affairs. The people give themselves to debauchery, cruelty, robbery, disorder, theft, and plunder, using weapons, poisons, water, and fire to stop innocent travelers on the roads and footpaths. As well, they seize their carts, horses, clothes, and furs to benefit themselves. And since these things began, disorder has been created in the world. Why have things come to this? It is because everyone is doubtful and suspicious on the question of whether or not ghosts and spirits exist, and don't clearly understand that ghosts and spirits are able to reward the worthy and punish the wicked. Now, if the people of the world could be brought to believe that ghosts and spirits are able to reward the worthy and punish the wicked, how could the world be in disorder?" Please note, being brought to believe is not the same as being brought to know, significantly. Skipping to 31.3. So the question as to whether or not ghosts and spirits exist is taken to be one that must be examined. In that case, if we are to examine this clearly, how can it be done? Master Mo said, "In bringing up the method of how the people of the world examine and know whether something exists or not, we must certainly take the ears and eyes of the masses to be a standard on the matter of existence and non-existence. If someone has genuinely heard or seen something, we must take it as existing, but if no one has heard or seen it, we must take it as not existing. If this is the case, why not put the matter to the test by going to a district or village and asking about it? If, from ancient times to the present, since people first came into existence, there have been those who have seen ghost-like or spirit-like things, or have heard ghost-like or spirit-like sounds, then how can ghosts and spirits be said to be non-existent? If no one has seen such things, how can ghosts and spirits be said to exist?" 31.4 gives us one of Mo's examples, of which there are many in this chapter. 31.4. "Nowadays, those who hold that there are no ghosts and spirits say, the people of the world who have seen or heard things that are ghosts and spirits are too many to count, but how many of them can truly say they have seen such things? Master Mo spoke, saying, if we are to take what many people together have seen, or what many people together have heard, then someone like the Earl of Du of former times is a case in point. King Xuan of Zhou had his minister, the Earl of Du, put to death, although he had committed no crime. The Earl of Du said, 'My ruler is putting me to death, although I have committed no crime.' Redundantly, if those who are dead are without awareness, that will be the end of the matter. But if those who are dead have awareness, then, within 3 years, I shall certainly cause my ruler to know it." Some 3 years later, when King Xuan of Zhou had gathered the feudal lords to go hunting at Pu, The hunting chariots numbered several hundred, and the followers several thousand. People filled the field. On the stroke of noon, the Earl of Dew appeared in a plain chariot drawn by white horses. He was wearing vermilion clothes and a vermilion cap. He grasped a vermilion bow and carried vermilion arrows under his arm. He pursued King Swan of Zhou and fired at him as he rode on his chariot, striking him in his very center and breaking his spine, killing him in his chariot. The king slumped over his quiver and died. At that time, among the Zhou followers, there was not one who did not see, and of those far away, not one who did not hear of it. It was recorded in the spring and autumn annals of Zhou, and it became something rulers used to instruct their ministers and fathers used to caution their sons, saying, "Be warned, be careful. All those who kill the innocent will suffer misfortune." The punishment of ghosts and spirits will be very swift like this. If we look at what is said in the writings of this sort, how can we doubt the existence of ghosts and spirits? Very easily. I'm sorry, I have to just comment there before moving on. Everyone saw it, and we wrote it in our book to prove it. Does this sound familiar at all? This in no way demonstrates the existence of ghosts and spirits. Anecdotal evidence is a terrible standard for genuine truth in any complex system. Now, it was much more plausible in Mo's time, obviously, and you can give him that much in allowing him the license to be wrong here. But clearly, the story that was mentioned, this could have been orchestrated by a small conspiracy of people which managed to remain secret. Somebody, upon witnessing the Earl of Dew's death, set into motion a plan to execute vengeance in accordance with the final words of the Earl, and then, executed it at the time that was most likely to show the maximum number of people that no, this was justified by heaven, and therefore to allow it to go forward without, questioning it too closely. It's very similar, I think, to the question of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. People who are hardcore sort of creationists or very strongly stick to the Bible claim that the resurrection of Jesus Christ is a very well-documented historical fact. I mean, I'm sorry, but I can totally accept that one fine day around 0 AD, around 33 AD, there was this Jewish preacher who was very charismatic, who was put to death by crucifixion. He was taken down when he appeared dead and placed in a cave, and that cave was sealed with a rock that was far too snugly fitting and convenient for anyone to move from the outside. And then 3 days later, or whatever it was, this preacher appeared again alive and was able to minister his followers before disappearing up, supposedly, to heaven. Now, in today's world, we know about things like comas, where somebody could appear to be dead by the medical standards of the time. They could have been placed into this peaceful and cool cave where the conditions were right for them to heal and be able, therefore, to regain consciousness naturally around 3 days later. And because of their sense of injustice or their will to live, they were able to brace themselves against the cave wall and move this enormous rock by using the sort of power of their back against the wall appropriately. And then they went back to their followers and delivered their final charismatic sermon before saying that they were going to ascend to heaven while actually thinking, I need to get out of here, and going off to live their life in seclusion or peace somewhere else, because they knew that if they continued trying to pursue their cause, they would no likely be killed again, and this time they would do it right. This kind of example could very easily be the case with Jesus Christ or with this ghostly tale of the retribution of the Earl of Dew, and with any of the other historical examples from the spring and autumn annals that Mo gives. So I'm going to skip over all of them to 31.12. Now, the arguments of those who hold that there are no ghosts say, if, in the writing of the former kings, the sages in every chi of silk and every pian of writing speak many times of the existence of ghosts and spirits, reiterating this again and again, then what are these writings? Master Mo said, of the Zhou writings, the Da Ya is one. The Da Ya says, King Wen is above, brightly shining in heaven. But Zhou is an old country, and its decree is now new. Is Zhou not illustrious? Was the Lord's decree not timely? King Wen ascends and descends on the right and left of the Lord. Profound indeed was King Wen, and his fame is heard unceasingly. If ghosts and spirits did not exist, then when King Wen was dead, how could he be at the left and the right of the Supreme Lord? This is how I know of the ghosts in the Zhou writings. Next, 31.16. It was for this reason that Master Mo said, it is right to think that ghosts and spirits are able to reward the worthy and punish the wicked. If this could be established at the outset in the state and among the 10,000 people, it would truly be the way to bring order to the state and benefit to the 10,000 people. If the officials in charge of government departments are not pure and incorruptible, or if men and women don't maintain proper separation, ghosts and spirits will see them. And then likewise, if there are people who waylay travellers on the road, ghosts and spirits will see them. So the officials in charge of government departments don't dare not to be pure and incorruptible. Mo loves his double negatives, although it's probably a factor of the translation. When they see what is good, they dare not fail to reward it. When they see what is evil, they dare not fail to punish it. And the same is true of those who waylay travellers. They will stop because of this knowledge of ghosts and spirits. So there is no licentiousness, even in the darkest places, that is not clearly apparent to ghosts and spirits, and every single person is aware and fearful of the punishment from above. In this way, the world is well ordered. So this is clearly the mechanism by which the belief in ghosts and spirits keeps people good through fear. Fear of reprisals, and pretty much nothing else. And this is not the only person in history who suggested it. It's a common idea that it's only fear of punishment that really keeps people virtuous. So finally, 31.20. Nowadays, those who hold that there are no ghosts and spirits say, as for ghosts and spirits, they basically do not exist. This is why we don't provide materials for the sweet wine and millet vessels and the sacrificial victims. It isn't that we are parsimonious regarding the materials for sweet wine and millet and the sacrificial victims. It is rather a matter of asking, what will we achieve? But above, this runs counter to the writings of the sage kings, and within, it runs counter to the conduct of filial sons among the people. And as far as being a superior officer of the world is concerned, this is not the way to be such a superior officer. This is why Master Mo said, now, when I carry out a sacrifice, it is not that I am pouring the material directly into a ditch or drain and abandoning it. I am effecting an exchange for the blessings of ghosts above. Says Mo. But there is, of course, no proof of this. I'm going to stop there. That's not quite the end of that paragraph. But this is the chapter of Percipient Ghosts, and I've already been fairly dismissive, but ultimately what I think this is Mo's myth. Now, if you're not familiar with that, the myth is Plato's way of allowing in the Republic the philosopher kings to control the masses. Plato comes to the conclusion that there is no way that the masses at large in the cave, as it were, watching shadows on the wall, there is no way that they can en masse be persuaded to embrace wisdom and come out of the cave of their own free will. They will fight to the death to avoid this, in fact. And so, the only way that the philosopher kings can truly institute a fair and just state, regardless of the fact that, the light eternal, Plato's beautiful and good, is objective and can be known, no, you still need an myth, some kind of heaven and hell. And the myth is the very first, I think, version of heaven and hell in the Western tradition. And it was taken on for all of the monotheistic religions which came after Plato. So heaven and hell, basically after a soul dies, it goes to a place somewhat like purgatory and is either directed to a pleasant realm or an unpleasant realm for reward or punishment, respectively. And then after a certain period of time, and this doesn't make it into Christianity and those kinds of religions, the soul is entitled to choose what life they will go into next. And they are actually allowed to choose whether they go into a powerful or a mean position. And the idea being that if you've been punished, maybe you are seeking a little bit of humility for your next life. And if you are rewarded, well, maybe your soul has achieved a level of enlightenment which will enable you to perform well as a more powerful and influential person in the state. So this is the myth of Plato, and the ghosts and spirits of Master Mo are fulfilling essentially the same role. They are the means by which the masses are kept in line, and by which everyone kind of follows this general idea of ghosts and spirits and heaven's intention, arbitrating Ren and Yi in the world. And that's why you can trust the Son of Heaven and all of his officials below it will act with Ren and Yi, or at least if they don't, they will be suitably punished. Clearly, this is not the case, was not the case through history, and is even less so the case now. With regard to the sacrifices, I think in that context, making sacrifices to the ghosts and spirits, especially if you're kind of sacrificing the best of that which has been grown over the season, it's a way of tying the mind of the people back to their means of production, and thus making it clear to them how much everybody gains by the state being run in an ordered fashion, how the produce that is made at the end of the season, the surplus that remains, is so much greater when everyone follows the auspices of heaven and pays due deference to ghosts and spirits of the middle realm. Obviously, this is tempered by Mo's asceticism, and obviously things like the funeral rites he talked about in an earlier video. These are things he does not approve of, but overall he still is very much in favor of these rituals and sacrifices being observed to the ghosts and spirits in order to reaffirm the mandate of heaven at the level of the people, and presumably all the way on up as the Son of Heaven has his own rituals to perform. So that is essentially my take on percipient ghosts in the Book of Mo. It's relatively short, but I think I've been fairly clear where I think it stands, and it follows on very much from heaven's intention, where my agnostic personality will just see essentially the same kinds of philosophical dodges that Christianity and the other monotheistic religions make use of in the West. And I do think it's very interesting that Mo's perspective has a very clear sort of parallels to Plato, who was essentially the first great philosopher of the Western tradition. But I hope you've enjoyed that, and please let me know what you think of my take on percipient ghosts, or if you've read it yourself, what you think of it personally. You know where the comments are. Thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.